Is that for me to embrace the concept of Black Lives Matter is something that I think I was doing all of my life. So to speak today is not something that is new to me because the truth is I understand what it is like to embrace that concept. And I want to touch a little bit or just mention that on April the 3rd, 1968, and several speakers today would have mentioned Martin Luther King in that speech where he indicated he went to the mountaintop. And he said, Mr. Speaker, that something is happening in our world. People are saying we want to be free. And this was 52 years ago. Mr. Speaker, I don't necessarily want to go to the mountaintop. I want to take the other position. Because on the 13th of June, Mr. Speaker, I went to a house of a 90-year-old to try to see how best, through my ministry, that we could do some repairs to her home at the end of her rainbow. 90 years old, Mr. Speaker. And she indicated to me, look, I am 90 years old and I soon leave this earth. I said, but you know, the truth is that we can repair this place for you so that you can have some comfort at the end. And I asked, because the house is in a state, Mr. Speaker, where she would have to move. And I asked her, do you have someone that you can live at during the repair period? And she said to me, Mr. Speaker, I have a brother who's living in St. George, but he's living on the mountaintop, and I'm in the valley. And Mr. Speaker, I want to anchor myself to her in the valley because that is where I spent all of my life. And in the last couple of months, as a result of COVID, I've been walking in the valley of the shadow of death. Because the reality is that I came to political life to ensure that persons within the constituency of St. John have a better way of life, Mr. Speaker. And one of the things they want me to say today is the elephant in the room in St. John, wherever I go, is that water problem, Mr. Speaker. The issue of water, and they're saying to me, if you talk today on this particular topic, make sure that you indicate that our lives matter and we need water in the constituency of St. John. And I've had reason over the weekend, Mr. Speaker, to indicate to those persons in St. John, because I understand the issue in the same vein that the honorable member for St. Joseph is feeling the pressure. I'm feeling it too. And I would have explained that we are putting measures in place to ensure that the problem of water in St. John is something that is rectified. But, Mr. Speaker, that is something that I know will come to an end. But I want to talk to some things that I have been seeing in my life, all of my life, in that valley, that I believe we need to change as a people. Somebody said this morning, don't mention the political class, but I think that I should mention the political class. Because if we seriously believe that Black Lives Matter, I think we have to remove the cloak sometime of this notion of importance. Mr. Speaker, almost every single week in this country, when I go to businesses to shop, I run into problems with persons at the cashier, and I'll tell you why. Because oftentimes I go to the cashier and I'm standing behind someone, Mr. Speaker, and the bill is $20.50. And I see individuals take out $50 and 10-cent pieces and 5-cent pieces and put it on the counter. But then when they're holding for the change, they hold up their hand. And I think it is disrespectful. So if Black Lives Matter, you can check it for yourself, or anybody in this room can check it for yourself. Then the same respect that we give to those persons who are supposedly high in society, I think we should give to the cashiers. And you know what they say? Because I asked them, I said to them, look, in the same vein that they put the money on the counter, look away and put the change on the counter. And you know what they say? They always go and complain for us. Because of this notion of arrogance, this notion that we are more important than the other person. And COVID is throwing up a situation where we are seeing that the real people who are important are those persons at the gas station, the persons in the supermarket who are pulling the load. But we believe that we move in big rides and we live in big houses, and therefore black lives don't actually matter. And I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that we need more and more to move into the valley with the 90-year-old who indicated that her family member is living on the mountain. And it is clear what she's saying. She cannot go to the mountain. But my political journey, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that I help those persons in St. John to climb the mountain a little bit at a time. Because like I said, I am the blood of the blood. I campaign on a mantra of home drums beating first. And it's still beating first. Regardless, I will do what I have to do. I campaign with a song that said change gonna come. And as a result of COVID, as a result of the death, the murder of Floyd, we're seeing the changes are coming, Mr. Speaker. So I stand here today fully embracing the concept because I have been living it every single day of my life. Every single day of my life I've been living it. Mr. Speaker, recently in the paper I would have seen something where an individual was hitting at our Prime Minister. And I don't need to defend the Prime Minister because I know she's very capable of doing it herself. But, you know, we spend a lot of money in terms of education and being qualified. And this is a guy who have doctor in front of his name and is saying, I'm not hearing anything coming out from the Prime Minister or the government about Black Lives Matter. Mr. Speaker, in the valley where I came from, I always heard that actions speak louder than words. And I am fortunate, very fortunate to be a part of a government that is doing a whole set of things to ensure that Black Lives Matter. And remember I said, Mr. Speaker, that what I'm doing in the constituency of St. John is to ensure at an incremental basis that people get to the mountaintop and that their eyes can see the glory as well. But the truth is that we have a government that is showing repeatedly every single week that we come into this chamber that Black Lives Matter, Mr. Speaker. In St. John, the free education, the return to university is a clear example that this government is showing that Black Lives Matter, Mr. Speaker. At my ministry, pit toilets and the roof eradication program is showing that Black Lives Matter, Mr. Speaker. Because what it is doing is allowing persons in the constituency of St. John to have a level of dignity as it relates to the removal of those pit toilets. Black Lives Matter, Mr. Speaker. The trust loan that is being pushed by the Honourable Member for St. George South is a clear indication again that Black Lives Matter to this government, Mr. Speaker. And all of these things that I'm mentioning here this evening, all of these things are being felt in the constituency of St. John. So when I heard that individual saying that there's nothing being said about Black lives from the government, what is happening as far as the action is concerned from this government, Mr. Speaker? And the truth is that, you know, I was involved in the civil service from in 1995, again, as a result of a Barbados Labour Party administration, when I worked as a youth officer. And even from back then, things were happening on a regular basis to show that Black Lives Matter. I was in youth work, Mr. Speaker, and I'm suggesting today that if we believe in truth that Black Lives Matter, then we need to reach out to the youngsters one by one by one and embrace them, because if we do that, then we're going to swing around even more lives. We had the Darsley situation yesterday where 2 individuals were killed, and I want to extend my sympathy, like the others, to the family. But I fear that if we are to turn around what is happening in the country, with the young people, then we need to reach out to those youngsters and really and truly show them as a government that we care about them in a significant and meaningful way. If not, I fear that we will have that bloodbath that we do not want to have on this island. And I know that the Minister of Youth is doing what is necessary within his ministry to ensure that we reach down to the youngsters again, because it happened up to from 1995 up to 2008. It was happening, Mr. Speaker. And I am suggesting that those 10 years, if the former administration can show anything of note on the country where you can point to it and say that Black Lives Matter, it is impossible to find. You had a Minister of Youth, Mr. Speaker, with a manifesto, a youth manifesto, with nothing, absolutely nothing happening from in the manifesto. They're claiming, or they used to claim, that the summer camps were under them. Mr. Speaker, one individual from 1995 was responsible for impacting the lives of thousands and thousands of children across this country. Black lives really mattered then. And I'm talking, you came and you spent $6 million in the first instance on the camps, and it was a total mess. And we have reformed youth affairs. The minister is doing a fantastic job in terms of how he's treating to the young people in this country. So Black Lives Matter to me, and it mattered in the constituency of St. John. And I will continue to work in the valley because, Mr. Speaker, that is where the bulk of persons that are in need are located, not on the mountaintop. But at the same time that I would want to say that Black Lives Matter, especially in St. John, my constituency is there are different persons living in St. John. I have Indians, I have whites, I have predominantly blacks. So Black Lives Matter, yes, but at the end of the day, people matter to me, Mr. Speaker. And that is my push in the constituency of St. John. Because to focus only on the lives of black people will be excluding those other persons who are part of the constituency. And one of the things that I want to say is that there are persons who in the constituency, who have businesses in the constituency that are not black, are also embracing the concept of Black Lives Matter, because during this COVID period, I have had assistance from several of those persons who have businesses in the constituency of St. John, who are outside of the constituency of St. John that are not black, but they're assisting as it relates to those persons who are struggling in the valley in St. John. And I, like I said, will remain in the valley until every single one, for example, in St. John, no longer have a pit toilet. That is one of my political goals before I exit, to change that, because Black lives matter to me, Mr. Speaker. And this is not from, being in here and having to make a speech. It is what I feel, is what I live, because I'm from the blood of the blood as it relates to that. What you see, Mr. Speaker, is what you get. The Mandingo in me will not allow me to do anything else. That is the reality, my friend. That is the reality. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't intend to be long tonight. I just wanted to share the information that I just want to share the information, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to my thoughts on Black Lives Matter. For me, it is something that I embrace. It is something that is not now a buzzword for me. I've been living it all of my life. Prior to political life, I was involved in several youth groups and organizing activities in St. John. As a youth officer, Mr. Speaker, I would have engaged in having CXC classes for persons in St. John so that they can have entry-level qualifications, so that they can have not only entry-level qualifications for work, but for university. Because back then, from 1995, Black lives matter to me. It mattered to me. So I was doing the work on the ground prior to my political journey. Prior to my political journey, I was doing it, Mr. Speaker. And I will continue to do it for the constituency of St. John, for the people who live in the constituency of St. John. And from my perch at the Ministry of Housing, by extension, I will also do it for the wider country, Mr. Speaker. And I know, I am going to close because I know that I have a couple of others who want to speak after me. And oftentimes in this chamber, persons go to the Bible. And I'm going to close there as well. And it is Timothy. And I have heard it in here before, and I believe I should repeat it now because Black Lives Matter. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. And I've kept my political faith. Black lives will always matter to this Mandingo. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to say how proud I am to have been able to sit and face this former youth commissioner and this dynamic young man who represents the interests of the people of St. John. And I am really very happy to be a part of this discussion. I want to say at the outset that I support this resolution, sir. Black lives do matter. So I'm in total agreement with it. I, as a young girl in the 1970s, was a very integral part. I was trim, 110 pounds, but I had one of the most beautiful Afro hairstyles you could ever want. And my African gowns and so, because I loved Elambe Motley. And this Yoruba African approach that he had, and therefore there was a very interesting concept coming through, not only in Barbados, but of course in the rest of the world, where Black people lived. And that whole African consciousness helped to cement in me and so many other thousands of life in Barbados and across the world that we know who we are and what we stand for. And therefore that kind of consciousness, that kind of understanding as to who we are, that created the pillars on which most of those of my generation do stand today. So I have a proud history, and nothing can erase our history. Our history is what we have inherited. We could not correct what happened before, but we had pioneers who went out there and they fought day and night. They were bruised. They were beaten. Their houses were burnt. They lost their partners. Their children were taken into the land to be pawn grass gangs and so, and not allowed to go to school to be able to enjoy that quality education that many of us now take for granted and have not been able to, those children of those days did not get that opportunity. And in that group, I refer to my 4 parents who always lived in rural Barbados. And of course, I had one of the proudest mothers anybody could want when it came to her and the work she did in the agricultural belt. But she was determined with her 8 siblings. Each of them must go to school and learn something. So that was the mantra of the day. You are Black children, you are poor, you hardly have anywhere to sleep, you have very little to wear, but take that pride with you. Nobody must look down on you. And every morning before we left to go to school, those 7 girls and 1 boy, she would say, go to school and learn. Whatever the teacher has in here, you want. I have not had the privilege to go beyond 3rd standard, but I want you all to be the beacons in this village. Though poor, don't look poor. And that has brought me thus far. And I'm sure that if my parents were here today, they will be extremely proud, not of me alone, but to see that we have a parliament represented by all Black people, most of all, of us coming from very poor origins. And we have to fight on behalf of the people of Barbados, whether black or white or whatever ethnic group or whatever. We have to fight for all of them because we are in this together as a proud Barbados. And so I am extremely proud to be here this evening, sir, speaking on behalf of the people of Barbados, but more particularly those of St. Thomas. Now, Mr. Speaker, and when we look at each other, I do not know why we will have to see each other in color. We see each other because we are framed in God's own image. And therefore, we walk around with this mantra on our shoulder that we are the best and the brightest and the greatest and the richest. And many of us have forgotten from whence we have come. I had the privilege, sir, of being in this honorable chamber, well, the one in town now, and one of the members of the government then, of that last administration, looked down on me one day and said, this is a resolution we are discussing about the University of the West Indies, but the honorable member for St. Thomas can't contribute because she really went nowhere. She went to university. And my response was, when my chance came to speak, Mr. Speaker, sir, I did not go to the University of the West Indies, but I pulled up myself, my bootstraps out of poverty, and thank you, Lord, I've been able to go to the University of Common Sense that the honorable member did not attend. And that was it. And I'm saying, why must we look down on one another? Because we may have come from a different environment, had gone to a different school, had different parents or parents who were middle-class persons and so on. At the end of the day, there's an equalizer, there's a leveler. And thank God that COVID was so very well managed in Barbados by the Honorable Minister of Health and the Czar and the frontliners and others. If that did not happen in the way that it was so properly coordinated and the services extended by the Honorable Minister and his team, there would have been a leveler in Barbados, Mr. Speaker. And I am so proud that we've been able to control COVID, because COVID made even those who were poor, poorer, as I witnessed it every day in this island, with people needing more and more, not because they want to add to what they had stored, but because they had nothing. And COVID has brought out some values from among us that have helped to stabilize this country, that we can see here today and gone tomorrow. Today you're up, tomorrow you're down. And the other leveler that we know, Mr. Speaker, sir, is to do with earthquakes. Earthquakes brought the people in Haiti to a level where even the president's house, or mansion, whatever you want to call it, in 2010 crumbled to the ground. When there was the terrible storm in Dominica, one of the first houses that got struck was that of the president. And that would have thrown him in a tailspin. So I'm saying, why must we be walking around haughty? We have arrived. We are different from anybody else. And at the end of the day, there's something called sickness. That boss boy called cancer. And diabetes and so, that level us all. We must come together as a proud people, coming out of slavery, and our forefathers working day and night, being beaten and scorned and deprived of every privilege to be able to build the Barbados that we are here today. So proud to know we've come through a system where we have had free education, most of us, not me, but I am proud to know that my colleagues and many thousands and thousands of Barbadians have had the privilege to get free education, free health care, and all the other aspects for living that have caused them to be the proud Barbadians that we are. And you know what? I have found that sometimes when we go to international conferences, and there are some other colleagues from the Caribbean with us, they look at us as though those Barbadians are really bright, you know. Those Barbadians are, and I'm not saying it's an envy, but there's something about it that they see us as strong, powerful people who can take our society from one level to the next and to the next. making sure that we embrace everybody. And so today, I am happy to know, Mr. Speaker, that the diversity of our people here in this country is so unique and so different. We know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that cricket has pulled us together in the region. Education, CSME and CARICOM and those other aspects that help to merge us as a people, we must hold fast to whatever that offers, because at the end of the day, there's unity, there's strength in unity, or unity is strength. I am concerned as a more senior citizen because I am unhappy with the kind of racism that I experience. Not experience, but I witness on a daily basis. Sometimes I get it too, but that does not matter because I'm an adult and I know I've come thus far and I know how to give the retort. But I know that in a lot of our schools, there's racism. My two sisters attended a particular school, one of the highest in this island. They had that privilege, I didn't have it. And they were tormented. They were treated so unkindly according to their experiences. And why must we do that? If it is going to happen in the school system where we should be nurturing young minds and preparing our people for the future, you can tell it will permeate the rest of the society. And so I want to encourage Barbadians, let us continue to come together and take out the subtle way in which the racism is experienced. And let us see how we can look at the norms and the values that have brought us thus far and see how best we can connect with each other to go forward, because black on black is really what bothers me at this time, and it should not be happening among us when we have got perfect examples from our pioneers who have shown us the way we should live and what we should do to continue to be a successful people, particularly understanding that that's the goal, that adage that says it takes a whole village to raise one child is what is responsible for each and every one of us in here today, and our Barbadians at the highest level, many of them. I heard, Mr. Speaker, and I know what Mr. Floyd would have said on his way out when he was suffering with that knee in his neck. And we've seen so many other black people murdered between those last 2 or 3 weeks, and all those massive demonstrations, and even up to yesterday, we're hearing about what happened in Carolina. I think it is South Carolina. And I'm saying it is not stopping. And of course, somebody sent me a video, and you know we have fake news, and I saw about 100 police officers, white ones, who threw in their handcuffs to say that they're resigning because they can no longer do the chokehold. Well, I would like them to come to Barbados because that's what my father and those had to do to kill the pigs in the yard. Kill the pigs to maintain us. So you put them in the chokehold. You did whatever to the animals. But how dare you do it to human beings who are made in God's image? And therefore, it has taken across the world in a way that blesses me. The only thing I don't like is the violence that is emanating from it. Last Saturday, when that father went to Wendy's in the United States to pick up whatever it was for his 8-year-old daughter's birthday, it was the same day, he fell asleep in the car. He lost his life. I saw a little boy only about 12, and I saw the video, and I've stopped watching them now, because watching them create something in me that angers me. And I know if it angers me, what about those young people out there who are seeing them, who have never had any bad experience or life experience, that they may want to go to do it too? I do not want them to keep doing it to our fellow men though, Mr. Speaker, because the black on black, and every minute you hear bang bang, and another young man shot, and another young man stabbed, and we know of the sadness of yesterday. And I would like, with your permission, sir, to extend deepest sympathy to the families of those two persons who lost their lives so tragically. But I am tired of hearing that. I am tired of experiencing it, because we know how to resolve our issues. We know conflict resolution, and we were always told, walk away. Any coward who runs away lives to see another day. Our young people are not running away or walking away. It is easy to follow the crowd. It takes courage to stand alone. So when you stand alone, when you see 4 other guys or girls doing foolishness, you're the strongest in the crowd. And you should be strong enough to say, man, don't do that. Girl, come along and mind your business. That is not worth it. Your character is more important than anything else. And I don't think that enough of the managing and the communication and the mentoring of older folks is trickling down to the young people. I know that sometimes my grandchildren say, Granny, they show me how to turn on the computer and how to do little things. And of course, in my young age, I forget. And then when they say, oh dear, I've lost it. Oh, Granny, you seem to be becoming a slow learner. But they come right back and help. And I say, you come right back, otherwise you need somewhere to live. And therefore, so the synergies are there. And sometimes we need to embrace them. Come right back and help me. And I get the help. And I'm saying, unless we're doing the mentoring, unless we're doing the parenting, and we're making those generational linkages this come together, we are going to lose more of our young people. When we had godfathers and godmothers, we saw totally different aspects for living. The godmother and godfather parented and guided those young people. We're not seeing much of that anymore. And unless we do the generational links, we are going to lose more of our children. And it hurts because black on black, and even if it were white on black, I will object to it. It should not happen. Mr. Speaker, sir, you would have had your wonderful experiences in the system as a social worker, and one of the best, I've been told. So let me congratulate you too, sir, because we didn't get the chance to do it otherwise. And you know, sir, how our little children, our young people are being molested. They're being abandoned sometimes by their parents and others. They're being treated so unkindly because they've come out of poverty. None of us wants to be born in poverty.
Honorable member.
Yes, sir.
As I alluded to yesterday in another place, I don't think that they're being abandoned by their parents. I don't think that at all. I think they're being abandoned by mothers and fathers, not parents. Very different. There's a distinction, honorable member,
yes, sir.
between your mother and their father and your parents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps they need to understand what are parents. But our children are being abandoned. They're being abused sexually, physically, emotionally, and it doesn't have to happen. And so that too, for me, is the black on black that is really destroying a lot of the pillars that have been built by our foreparents to let us know that we are to come together and nurture and uplift. The black and black too, sir, is also associated with the domestic violence. Many of our women are beaten badly, and some of our men, but very few. None should be beaten at all. The gender-based violence in this country is growing, and our women have to be running with their children. The children, they have to go to the battered center. So much is happening. Sometimes the maintenance is not there, and the women are suffering with the children. Sometimes the men are there. They don't have the women, and some parents and the children. They have the children, and the women don't go to give anything. We have so many challenges in this society because we do not have proper communication and dialogue. And unless we do it and understand, you don't take that little child or those few children and cut them right down the center that the dislike is for their parents. For me, that is the black on black that bothers me and bothers so many others. I also want to say, Mr. Speaker, as a result of what is happening with a lot of our young people, they get rich or die trying, that too is taking a toll on so many young men who are incarcerated. As I said, so many of them who are injured or who lose their lives. And any one person who gets killed tragically creates a painful experience in any household, in any community, in any environment at all. I am hurting, Mr. Speaker, sir, about our senior citizens. And I get letters, I get phone calls, and there's so many others of us who get them. The numbers are so large now, they too are abandoned. They too are robbed. They too are raped sexually and sexually raped. They too are raped. They too are deprived of meals and so on. It is not the Barbados we know. And therefore, that for me is black on black that is destroying the world, destroying our little society that we have grown so much to love. I want to say that our foreparents, many of them, would have gone to Panama, England, the United States and other countries to work. And their remittances help to build this country. And I know I have one young sister who was married to a white man for more than 30 years. He is one of the finest men that I have met in my lifetime as a white man, because I don't deal with white people otherwise for joke, except to give pleasantries. I'm not familiar with them in that way. But I'm saying he was one of the best parents. So I am not going to go down that racial line when you hate white people because they've got this and got that. My other problem is the banks and the other lending institutions, not so much the credit unions, but they're willing to give black people $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to buy a car. But if they go with a business, an idea to be able to do a small business, they can't get a single cent because the car is so popular. You go down the road, the ZR hit it, lick up, car gone. And then you have to be struggling again to be able to get back on your feet. I am proud that the honorable member for St. George North has that, South, excuse me, has that project where the St. George South, Your Honor, has got that project where young people and others can go to help to be able to get funding and training to be young entrepreneurs, to be able to set up their own businesses. And it hurts me even more because as a young child, every community had 3 and 4 shops. And the children came into the shops and dispatched. That is our culture. If a father was a mechanic, the boys came out and learned the skills to carry on that mechanic business. If the father was a carpenter, similarly. And then we said free education, and our same 4 parents only went to 3rd standard and 4th standards, but they were extremely bright. And we determined free education is there, or I'm going to pay for a private school, secondary, for you to go to learn and to lift us out of poverty. And sometimes rather than lift them out of poverty, these same children go into new environs and forget the bridge that they have crossed. And then they're not going back because no little shop I'm not going to manage. That shop would have raised so many families, fed so many households in the village, and then that shop becomes shut down. And we're talking about why can't black people become entrepreneurs? We had Annie Wilson, Mr. Speaker. We have the Jordans. We have the Binos. We still have people. But some of us believe, well, the fussiest car is the one, or build the biggest house is the one, and we forget we need something to help to instill in us a balance of how we can improve our lot, how we can invest in chickens, gardening, growing food, doing so many other things. A lot of us have got that mentality. Let us go to work in businesses, and we don't have to rely on the little house in the village and so on. I am proud to be a member of this distinguished party, the Barbados Day Party, Your Honor, because we have been able to make strides over the many years. And that Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act has been a beacon. And when we talk about it with other countries, when we travel, people say 10 cents per square foot land for poor people. Yes, for poor people who lived on those plantations. They gave their blood, sweat, and tears, and then they had to have a chattel house because if they did not go to work on a particular day or went to another plantation, they had to take up the chattel house and scotch it somewhere else. I am proud to walk through Hopewell and Lion Castle and Spring Farm and Bridgefield and those communities to be able to see how our people have been able to be empowered as a result of that 10 cents per square foot through the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act in the early 1980s. I believe it is 1981, 82. That is not all. The franchise. Barbadians being able to get the privilege to vote. So many people in the rest of the world didn't get that opportunity, but our pioneers in the Labour Party were able to do that. They got vacation with pay. And we are proud to know the Honourable Minister for Labour has started to pioneer and look forward now for paternity leave so that our men can get that opportunity. It is visionary, and it says we are tying into what is happening in the rest of the world. I know some private companies, about 2 or 3, are already doing it, but it is what we should do to empower our people and give them that opportunity to let people say black people have got brains too, and they can be able to manage in a way their own affairs and to go to the next level. Mr. Speaker, sir, I just want to encourage Barbadians. We have come thus far out of slavery, out of the depression, and we've come to independence. We've got the ownership of our lands, most of us. Many of us are still struggling to be able to improve the quality of life we have. And it is our duty as our senior citizens, it is our duty as our leaders and those who are the ones to be helped to nurture and to set good examples for us to get into our communities, into our villages, and talk to our young people, share experiences with them to help them with the conflict resolution, to help them to learn to conform with the law. You have to give respect to the members of the constabulary. You have to give respect to your teachers in the classroom. That is what black people were accustomed doing. We must work with them and let them know you are important too. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that it is incumbent upon all of us as a people to continue to plan strategically and to make sure that we give urgent attention to further educate our people. We can't just hang there. Yes, they're back into the University of the West Indies. Poor people's children have gone back there. The other tertiary institutions and so on, they are serving the children and the clients well. But I think it is important that we get back to curriculum reform. We are losing too many of our children in the loop. The worst thing in the world, Mr. Speaker, to happen under that last administration of the last 10 years, well, 10 years, 2008 to 2018, was to have closed the Alma Parish School. If we are diverse people, we do not always learn at the same rate. My sisters were brighter, so they went ahead at their distinguished schools, but I was there plodding along, and because of poverty, had to stop and never step in the fifth form yet. However, I had that entrepreneurship and thing in me, that entrepreneurial spirit and that capacity and that avarice to want to learn. And my mother pushed, and therefore here I am. And I'm saying all children learn alike. Some of them have innate abilities. They're into the art and the performing arts. They're into singing the calypsos, like His Honor, who is with us today. They're into doing so many other things with the mixed abilities. And we still keep pushing them and shunting them through schools when we know it's the same old, same old. We need to get to civics, Mr. Speaker. I did civics in primary school, and it put me in good stead. I knew everything that was happening in the Caribbean. There was no technology, but you had to use books. You had to sit and read. You had to stand and read so the others could hear. And when you made little errors, you were not laughed upon or laughed at. You were corrected. And it has helped us to become proud Barbadians. We need to look at curriculum reform and change it around. If you're not scrapping the common entrance, and I believe we are at the stage where we could do full zoning now and take out some of the stigma out of education, I believe that we should be able to get our children do that general paper. The general paper made the distinction in what was happening in education. Our children got to know a broader and wider aspect of living when they did that general paper. It was moved unceremoniously, and it has been to our detriment. And therefore, I want to see curriculum reform where our children go from pace to suit the capacity and the level they are at, and not to be into the forced learning. Too many of our boys are left out of the loop because the boys' learning styles are not the same. And when you look at it in our culture, most of our primary school teachers are women. And sometimes there are women who are very angry and broken too because the partner might have treated them unkindly, the husband got up and left, whatever the difficulties were. And some of them don't know how to rear boys because boys are different. In my classroom, give me 50 boys and I will teach my 50 boys and be successful. When it comes to the girls, they try in and every little petty thing. And there are some teachers who would rather teach all girls and not the boys. And our primary schools are suffering from male teachers because there's so many single parent homes with women at the head, and our boys are being shunted in a corner. And so I would like to see the curriculum reform happen. I would like to see the civics happen in our schools, Mr. Speaker. I would want to see values education being put on the school's curriculum so that we can look at the value system and let our children know about respect about decency, about ethics, about sharing and caring, about volunteering and things of that nature. Black people have the capacity to do it, as are those of any other ethnic groups, and we must come together, and the black people matter. School of Excellence, we have heard so much about it. There are some children who can pick up the skills, they can dance, they can bake, they can do so much, but unfortunately, it is the rigid academic aspect of things that's being offered to them. I want to see
2 more minutes.
Yes, sir. I just want for us to, Mr. Speaker, sir, to get back to focusing on culture, teach them about the landship, teach them about the credit union, or what we used to call, there's a name we used to call it where they will save their funds and so. Teach them about, more so Trinidadian, but that's all right. But teaching them, the meeting turn, yes. Teaching them about ownership and how they can look after their own property and how they can become the best citizens that we will want to, and to lift their self-esteem. We must not sit back on our laurels. All of us in here, each of us in here has a responsibility to be able to walk with, to hold hands, to nurture, and to make a difference in the light of what is happening in our country. And I'm sure that if we go along that trajectory, Mr. Speaker, we will make a difference in what is going on in the world to make our people the best. I want to say as I close, I am so happy to be a part of this distinguished chamber here today and to be able to witness the unfolding of a collective set of minds and ideas, to be able to say to the people of this country, we have come thus far. Let us continue to let the village be the one to raise the children. Let us continue to share. We're going to have difficulties. We're going to have challenges, but we can unleash that spirit of generosity, that spirit of sharing and caring and nurturing. And once we do that, I believe that Barbados will continue to be the proud country that we are. And I close by Bob Marley's song, the great Bob Marley, where I think the statement is, there. The final sentence, Mr. Speaker, I've got it all mixed up, because sometimes when you're so young, you need to jot down. It says, one love, one heart, let's get together, and we'll feel all right. And therefore, if we come together with one love, one people, and we follow our national anthem, and we follow our motto, and we do the things that we know are Barbadian, we can make it together, and we will be able to minimize the anger, the jealousy, the fighting, the killing, the shooting. When we come together under God's watch, I am sure that Barbados will rise again. And I share the sentiments expressed by our members in the chamber that it is not only about us in Barbados, but it is about the rest of the world coming together, because Black lives matter, human beings matter, being formed in the image of Almighty God. I wish to thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member, Mr. Michael South.
Good night, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, like all Barbadians, I was affected yesterday, sir, by the tragic loss of life for Mr. Glenroy James, sir, and Mr. Christoph Griffith. And I obviously wish, on behalf of my own family, to extend my condolences to those two men and their families, sir. And I take note as to what the Prime Minister said in relation to persons suffering with mental illnesses and how we treat that in this society. I also, sir, wish early to say a very special thank you to the Honourable Member for Christchurch South for bringing this resolution, sir, and for the way in which he presented it to this House for debate, Mr. Speaker, sir. You know, I find this particular resolution, sir, to be of great interest to me. And like most of us, sir, born into this country, we are descendants of people who were not brought to this country by choice. And for any of us to think that we are better than anybody else, sir, those of us who are of the same color, sir, is indeed a tragedy. But, sir, I feel a pain, sir, and an angst when I think about the suffering of everybody, anybody. Sir, I cast my mind to Germany, sir, particularly in Auschwitz, sir, in the 1940s, and I feel bad for the Jews, sir. It affects me on a human level. I think, sir, about what happened in Tiananmen Square in 1989, sir, and I feel bad on a human level because I said in the election, sir, that we are all threads in the very same fabric of life. We're connected, sir. But there has never been a crime as heinous, sir, as that of slavery. There has never been a crime, sir, as heinous as that of slavery, sir. And I have tried in my writings to try to capture some of this, sir. I wrote a verse, sir, if you would allow me. And at the time, sir, I tried to capture it. I said, but can you imagine it? Being trapped like sardine in a slave ship, victim of economics. Cheap labor, they call it. And you whole tribe in a panic because you left on a journey that should have taken 5 minutes and never returned. Taken, sir. Dragged from your family, sir, without notice. Placed on a ship for hard days and nights, sir, in a space where you had to urinate and defecate, sir, in the same space. Dehumanizing, sir, as it comes, sir. So there's nothing as heinous as slavery, and slavery in the Caribbean became so perfected that they were able to export that cruelty to other places. The model, sir, for Caribbean slavery was then exported to other places, sir. So effective was it, and so perfected in the Caribbean, the kind of cruelty, sir. And I find it very difficult, sir, and I will say this early. I was going to say it a little bit later. But I find it very difficult, sir, for me to associate myself with any symbol, sir, that is a manifestation, sir, or a reflection, sir, of anyone, sir, that purported to be involved in slavery. I cannot understand, sir, why in a modern Barbados, like most young people in this country, why there is still a statue of Nelson in the middle of town. Sir, and I say so, sir, cognizant of the fact, sir, that some may think that we should not go this road, but sir, I find it somewhat offensive, sir. And allow me to read it, sir. I read, sir, one of his own personal letters, sir. It's online. And he states, this is Horatio Nelson, sir, I have ever been and shall die a firm friend to our present colonial system. This is him writing about the situation in England. He is die hard, as they say, committed to the cause, that cause. And he went on to talk about how he appreciated the West India possessions because the islands in the Caribbean and the people were possessions, sir. And he says, sir, while I have an arm to fight in their defense, or a tongue to launch my voice against the damnable and cursed doctrine of Wilberforce and his hypocritical allies. And Wilberforce, as you are aware, sir, was the person who was fighting for abolition, sir. And he is calling the man, sir, well, his whole doctrine, sir, of Wilberforce and his hypocritical allies, sir, I do not support it. And I want to put that out there in clear terms, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I hope that we have a conversation about that, but I also feel we need to have a bigger and a deeper conversation. But that is not the end of the game, sir. I feel we need to have a bigger and a deeper conversation. I remember as a student at community college in history class, I did A-level history. I remember, sir, Trevor Marshall teaching us about different aspects of slavery, sir. And he spoke about a Bishop Coleridge and a Bishop Parry who owned slaves. And we still have schools in this country named after people who proudly own slaves. We need to have a larger conversation, sir, about the way these things, sir, are placed into our psyche and the way it affects us as a people, sir. And anybody who thinks that it does not matter, sir, obviously, sir, has missed the boat because these things matter. And that these symbols, sir, are left there long after the original hurt, long after the original crime, but that these things do more damage than the original hurt and the original crime. and that they're left there, sir, to perpetuate themselves, sir, into the future, sir, almost into in perpetuity, to make sure, sir, that those of us who come long after the crime is done, sir, carry the same burden of that crime, sir. So if I have a problem with Mr. Nelson, sir, I hope nobody's offended by it, sir, but Miss Horatio Nelson did Barbados no favors. He did Kurt Humphrey no favors, sir. And he did the people that I have the honor to represent, sir, the poor black people in St. Michael South, no favors. And I have no problem, and I make it clear with any white people, sir. But I feel, sir, that when we get to a point where we can have a mature conversation, I feel, sir, that I should be able to, honesty requires that I should look at a man and say, look, I know you've done this thing to me. I hope that we can get past it. But you have to say, yes, I understand too, that I've done this thing to you too. And be willing to say, I am sorry. And hopefully, sir, be willing to say, sir, that Barbados and some other Caribbean countries deserve some kind of reparations. And that these, sir, I feel are the conversations that we need to start having in this country, sir. I listened to the Honorable Member for St. Michael East when he spoke. Mr. Speaker, sir, I listened to him. I always listen to him. But I listened to him when he spoke, and he mentioned the American Civil War, briefly. Black people who fought in that war are still waiting for their 40 acres and their mule. Still waiting for their 40 acres and their mule. It never happened. They never got it, sir. They say because Lincoln got shot and Johnson didn't support it, but whatever the reason, it never happened, sir. So for generations, whether it be here or whether it be there, sir, this has been our reality. And I must tell you, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I honestly say this with absolutely zero malice in my heart. Zero malice in my heart. I listened to Malcolm X. I listened to Martin Luther. But Martin Luther King had a verse that I like. He says, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Sir, so when I rebuke people, I rebuke them in love. And you hope that love can do that, sir. But we all have to come to a point, sir, where we accept that some things were wrong. Some things were wrong, sir. And that those of us who have to carry on the legacy, sir, must be bold and be brave. If you want to be my friend, and I want to be your friend, it has to begin on an honest platform. It cannot begin, sir, in silence, or it cannot begin, sir, in fear. I am honest, and I hope you're honest too. One of my favorite, Peter Tosh song says, I'm a progressive man, and I love progressive people. I am an upful man, and I love upful people. I am an honest man, and I love honest people. And that is the case, sir. And this is me. I present myself, sir, and I hope at the end of it, me and whoever could still be friends, sir. But I live in the know. I also live in the know, sir. I read Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And if you read that book, sir, you would see, sir, the constant exploitation of Africa by the Europeans. But I feel, sir, that we need a new book. We need a new book and talk about how how Africa developed Europe. Not how Europe underdeveloped Africa. How Africa developed Europe. Because I feel if we have that conversation about how Africa developed Europe, then you could look at all your riches that you gain in the deal, if you could call it a deal, and then determine, sir, that I rightfully deserve X amount of it. Because that is the conversation that we need to have today. I don't want nobody to pity me now. I am not searching for pity, sir. I want to have an honest conversation about the systems and the societies that we built, sir, and that the fact remains, sir, that there has not been an honest compensation for the damage that has been done, sir. That is the conversation that I want to have, sir. If I had more time, I had an example, but I know I don't have a lot of time. It is late, and I will leave that for
I determine how much time you have.
That is true, sir. That is true, sir. That is true.
You have time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
You have time.
Thank you, sir. And you know, sir, slavery in the Caribbean, sir, and slavery in the U.S. was institutionalized manslaughter. It was institutionalized murder. There was a point at which, sir, more people were killed the death rate was by far higher for black people than the birth rate. I mean, when you think about it, sir, when you think about it, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is ridiculous. The death rate was significantly higher for black people on slave plantations at one point than the birth rate. And they weren't dying of natural causes, Mr. Speaker, sir. So when I realize that institutional racism is happening now, this ain't just start. This is a manifestation, sir, a carrying on, if you will, of that which has started years ago on slave plantations. When that knee was in George Floyd's neck, sir, that is the same institutionalized murder that occurred on the plantation, sir. We have to be real about it, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is the same institutionalized murder, sir, that happened on those plantations. So, but here we are, many years later, and I make the point again, sir, because it is important, because I hear comparisons always being made about black people, this and Indians, or blacks and whites and different things, sir. Blacks were the only race of all races, sir, that were taken from where they were, sir, forced to work somewhere else, deprived of their family, their religion, their language, their music, their culture, everything, stripped entirely, made to move from one place to another place, deprived of everything that made us, sir, who we are. When other people move, sir, they carry their family. They carry their music, sir. They were allowed, sir, to maintain the family unit. Slavery saw completely to the devastation of the family unit. It was built that way. So do not tell me about what the other races do and how they carried on their family. They were not deprived of it. Mr. Speaker, sir, blacks were deprived of it in the Caribbean. So we cannot compare. It's not comparing apples and apples. You are comparing apples perhaps in nuts or dunks or something. But it is not the same thing, sir. We were deprived entirely of it all, sir. And it took us a long time for us to come around. Mr. Speaker, sir, you know, when I was young, and even though, you know, where I lived in the Pines, sir, they used to have a lot of Rasta men. I tried with them a few times, but that's another story. But they used to have a lot of Rasta men in the Pines, sir. And I have never seen a class of people so discriminated against. So discriminated against. And why? They were discriminated against because they represented everything that was black. And we were taught to hate everything that was black. We were taught, sir, to hate ourselves. So when you saw Rastas walking, sir, and they're growing their hair and they're saying, this is my natural black hair, and they grew it, well, you would know. I mean, I am preaching to the converted, but you would know. Mr. Speaker, sir, you would know. When they grew their hair, sir, people saying, man, you gotta cut your hair, what's wrong with you? The moment you want to grow your hair, what's wrong with you? All of a sudden, no, my brother grew locks, Merle's son gone mad. You must hear it. You was a bright fella, a bright, like, skin fella. Oh, Lord, you could do, you know what I mean? Because they wanted you to hate yourself, sir. And you know, they wanted us to hate ourselves. It was a consistent thing. And I want to have, sir, in this conversation, sir, it has to be an honest conversation. That is why there are things that I work on so hard, sir. You would hear me, and I also know the Honorable Leader of Government Business and the Representative for St. Michael Southeast, sir. She must have had a hard time when she grew her locks too. They were lovely. Lovely locks. And that is why I'm happy that she's the Minister of Education, sir. Because we have to have real education in Barbados, sir. The books that we are being taught to read, sir, don't tell our story. There's an African saying that says, until the lion tells his tale of the hunter will always get the glory. Until we tell our story, sir, somebody else is going to get our glory. Mr. Speaker, sir, that is why I'm glad that the honorable member is leader of the opposition, because she understands and she knows. Leader of government business, sir. That is such a slip. Normally when I'm here, sir, in this mood, my vibe is normally toward you. But sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, I also feel the same about the need for us to eradicate pit toilets, sir. I feel the same about the need for us to make sure people have access to water, sir. And I know the Honorable Minister of Water and Energy, sir, is working desperately to make sure that happens, sir. I feel the same about a lot of these things, sir. But in my constituency, sir, I was talking to a family the other night, and they showed me a place where Jackie Opal used to live. At one point, I know he came from the city, but at some point he was living in Charleston. I also, sir, know across the street in the city, but I like to claim him, because it's still the Bay Land, where Sagari Sobers grew up, sir. These are heroes, sir, in our country, sir, in my constituency, to a certain extent. I claim him, Minister Bossett, Honorable Minister Al, sir. If I am going to put a statue in town, I want to see it of Jackie Opal, of Sagari Sobers, sir, Suki King, or the most honorable Gabby, sir, Anthony Gabby Carter. That is the statues we should have in town, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I say so again, sir, I have no issue with any race at all, Mr. Speaker, sir. But if you have a problem when we talk about history, and these are all facts, you know. If the facts of the past bother you, sir, then something is not wrong with me or those facts. The problem, sir, lies with you. And I am just stating the facts, sir, as I know them, sir. And I will wrap up those, sir, because it's getting late. But these, sir, are the things that matter to me. So we believe, sir, that black people in many cases still want handouts. That's not true. Sir, I do not even begin to understand this thing about a meritocratic society, a system based on merit. This idea that everybody got access to education, so why the poor people, children, ain't benefiting from it. Or everybody got access to this, so everybody. It's not the case, sir. It is not. A system based on merit, sir, is equally as unfair in many cases as one that is not, and I will explain. When children go to school, sir, all have access to education, but some going to school at the same school, one left home in the morning, very, very hungry. The other left home having had a good meal, sir. It's a system based on merit, sir, but is it really? Sir, you get to school, sir, one child knows how to respond to a stimuli different from another child, sir, but our school system has been shaped in such a way that they favor one kind of response, sir. Is that a system based on merit, sir? In these circumstances, sir, we need a radical shift. Sir, when you get to A-level, CXCs or whatever, sir, one set of children going to lessons for maths, for English, for everything. Poor people, children ain't going to nothing, so you here at the end of the day, the child who got 10 CXCs is going to get the job. The child who got 1 or 2 can't get the job, but everybody had the same chance, sir. Is it so? So a system that is based solely on merit, sir, has its flaws. It has its flaws, sir. And I think, sir, we have to have a real conversation, sir, about some of these things, sir. And, sir, as I wrap up, sir, I want to build or be part of a team that helps to build Barbados, sir. But I have to do so as honest me, as authentic me. And I hope, sir, that we can continue to do this. I must tell you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that in the ministry we are having conversations with the yacht club about teaching people how to sail. And in those conversations, I said to them, sir, and it was a good conversation, a very honest, open conversation, because I am always me. And I said to them, sir, when we start, rolling out this program so that we bring more people into a relationship with the ocean and the sea, sir, I don't want to hear that there are no issues when little black boys from my constituency, sir, strolling up and down through the yacht club. And, sir, to their credit, sir, no issues so far. And we will continue to do this, sir, because I want to work with whoever wants to work with me. But I would like to think at the end of the day, sir, that I have so empowered enough people, sir, so that we have enough black people owning businesses, sir, enough black people being in a position to train other black people, sir, and to not feel afraid or ashamed when you have to say, sir, I am black. sir, or that I want to support black businesses, sir. You see it everywhere. When you go overseas, sir, when you go in Chinatown, Chinese people eating in, did you don't see them eating in the Jamaicans restaurants? And I don't have a problem with that, but you don't see them eating in the Bajan restaurants, though we don't have enough overseas. You see them going where they go. When we go, sir, when I was in Boston, sir, we were going out with the Africans, so they want to go and eat in African restaurants. There's nothing wrong with saying that I want to go and eat in a Bajan restaurant or a black restaurant, sir. But I spend a lot of money in white restaurants too. And there's nothing absolutely wrong with it. So I feel that we need to have a conversation, sir, about empowering people from the start to the bottom, sir, from the top to the bottom, from the start to the finish, sir. And my last point, sir, is on the environment. Because believe it or not, the environment conversation is really a conversation about black lives. Because who do you think, sir, will be most exposed in the event in Barbados? Should we be faced with a tragedy, sir, a Category 4, a Category 5 hurricane, sir? The low-level areas in the city, for sure, in your constituency, sir, and in mine, in yours too, Honorable Leader of Government Business. All these low-level areas, sir, where poor black people live. So every time I hear that there's a hurricane or a storm coming, sir, my mind races to my constituents. So whenever it rains, sir, there was a time we got the situation fixed and assigned the Honorable Minister of Transport and Works. But whenever the rain would fall, Sir, Clark's Avenue would flood out. People couldn't get out of their houses. The same situation I'm experiencing, sir, in Paddock Road. It has to change. I have the same thing in Browns, sir. Has to change. But I know, sir, that when there is an environmental threat, sir, it is black people who will feel most. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, the environmental issues, sir, are about black lives. Those of us who are on the front line of this thing, sir, recognize, sir, well, look at it, sir. When the Prime Minister speaks about the program, sir, our Roof to Reef program, about building stronger houses so that they could withstand hurricanes, sir, about taking the roofs, sir, and making them be able to withstand Category 4 hurricanes because a lot of our roofs cannot. So who do you think we're talking about? Or, sir, when the COVID pandemic started, sir, and there was $600 made available so people could live in this country during the hardest times, who were we talking about? Or the $1,500 or so, sir, that we were giving to small businesses, sir, entrepreneurs, so that they could get through a difficult period. Who are we talking about? So when people say, sir, that the government did not do anything for Black Lives Matter, sir, they must obviously not be looking at the facts. And I came to deal with the facts, sir. The facts in our history and in this country, and the facts, sir, of what we have done since we started this thing. And, sir, I wish to close. I got a lot of things to say, but I wish to close, sir, by the idea, sir, I heard the Honourable Member, Representative for Christchurch East Central, my good friend, the Minister of Youth, said that all, West Central, sir, said that all lives matter, and of course they do. But, sir, I know if I saw somebody drowning, sir, I would go and say, save that drowning man. And you tell me everybody wants saving. Fair enough, but that man drowning, save that man. That drowning man's life matter. Black lives matter, sir. And it is in that context, sir, that we need to have the conversation. And I am not afraid to say it, Mr. Speaker, sir, Black lives matter. And the history, sir, and the reality of things would seem to suggest that that may not necessarily be the case. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to close, sir, if you would let me, sir, with a poem, the end of a poem that I had written, sir. My last verse of that same piece, sir. It says, it's not a document of the House. Sir, the last verse, sir, of the piece that I spoke of, how the struggles that we've been through, sir, it says, so yes, I admit the damage has been done. And we speak of one love when we really ain't one. So brothers, listen, because this is the hour. We need to seek wisdom, for knowledge is power. And to stand on a mountain and proudly declare that, Jah, you have blessed me with my African hair. We have lied to ourselves. Let us rise up from that. Because you are not ugly, my friend. We are black. And black is a mystery that's yet to unfold. And black is a story never properly told. And black is pure beauty. So that is what I am. I am a warrior, a storyteller, a a Caribbean African, sir, I am obliged, sir. Thank you very much.
Honourable member for St. George North.
Mr. Speaker, I want to deliver a COVID speech tonight. I don't intend to be too long, but this debate is very important, and therefore I have to lend my voice to it. Mr. Speaker, I want first of all to thank the member for Christchurch South who brought this resolution here today, and he has really touched the nerves of all right-thinking Barbadians, and I'm sure that more and more persons are listening to this debate than we can imagine. Mr. Speaker, I want to say from the outset that I was born before independence, Barbados independence. I am rooted in colonial times. I went to school in the colonial era, primary school, and just started my early secondary education when we got independence. But I want to say from the outset too that in those years we heard about a number of persons who we thought were supposed to be brave warriors, were supposed to be good men, and we were told from the history book, because I know that a number of us quote history books and sometimes we do not usually look at the reason why we were told they were so good. And I can think about persons like Guy Fawkes. Guy Fawkes was supposed to be a brave person, and we celebrated Guy Fawkes every 5th of November. I don't know if you remember those days, Mr. Speaker. And we were supposed to light starlights and bombs and so on. Guy Fawkes was the man. We learned later that Guy Fawkes was the man who tried to blow up the parliament. But he was supposed to be a good man. We learned also that Horatio Nelson he fought in the Battle of Trafalgar. He lost his life, but he saved the Caribbean from the French when the French had invaded the European world. And he was supposed to save the Caribbean, the islands, for the British. We also heard about other persons like Lord Combermere and Lord Codrington, Hitler, and these were supposed to be good men. And Mr. Speaker, but you know, one of the persons that we were told that were supposed to be a bad person was Fidel Castro. I always remember growing up in the 60s, we were told that Fidel Castro was not only a bad person for the Caribbean, but the British and the Americans led us to believe that anything coming out of Cuba was bad, and that communism was supposed to be the worst thing we could ever see. And we were told this in our history at most of the schools. That was the history of the day. But we have now come a new generation, and this generation now has come a long way, and it took us really a pandemic, it took us COVID-19 for our world to change. And we are seeing a world changing right before our eyes. That after this pandemic, we have seen, Mr. Speaker, that persons are willing not only to accept change, but are willing to do more than we ever thought would have come. And the whole world, and we are part of it, must accept the change, because the young people are demanding change. We must put measures in place today, Mr. Speaker, to help our people get over the psychological impact of slavery. We must put measures in place, Mr. Speaker, to rid our society of the whole notion of capitalist thinking. And when they say capitalist thinking, Mr. Speaker, because this whole notion that we are talking today is really rooted in capitalism versus socialism. And I want to explain, Mr. Speaker, what I mean by this. Because you see, the expansion of Europe is really is what carried this whole world into a topsy-turvy. The expansion of Europe. In the 15th century, many Europeans felt that the world was flat and that if you go beyond a certain limit, you will fall off. I remember those days, Mr. Speaker, because I know you heard that you could not go beyond the horizon. And there were thinkers who came up with the idea that if you go beyond, and the King of Spain in the day decided that I want to put my money behind any person who thought that they could go beyond the horizon. And this is what led to the expansion of Europe, where you heard about the Armada, the Spanish Armada, and you heard about ships going beyond, and Columbus in those days, and other persons expanding Europe. And all of this led to the whole thinking that we want to, it was a revolution really, which led to the invention of the wheel. It led to the invention of engines, sails, and so on. And hence, you had persons for the first time going as far as Europe, as Asia, as far as Africa, and then the expansion into the Caribbean. And when this happened, Mr. Speaker, you had a situation where the invention or the found for the very first time islands beyond the horizon, the Caribbean, islands in West Africa, islands in the Americas, and the notion of capitalist society at the time, where the demand for profits, the demand for more wealth grew, and hence you had the situation where Europe felt that they had to bring slaves out of Africa in order to supply labor into the Americas. And this is what led to a situation where a conflict between whites and blacks for the first time, and the history is there. So that the concept of white domination over blacks was noticed for the very first time. And this is what caused our society now, as we look back on how Africa, I heard member for St. Michael South talk about how Europe underdeveloped Africa and how it must be a reverse situation where people are now demanding that. But the clash that we need to understand is how Europe itself, how Europe put in place a situation where for the very first time you have a dominance of a white class over other minority groups. In the Caribbean, we saw a situation where the Spanish, English, French, Belgium, all of the Europeans came into contact with minority peoples, and they just wiped them out. All the minorities, the Arawaks, the Aztecs, the Mayas, all of these people were wiped out by the Europeans. This in itself led to the capture of slaves from Africa into the Americas. And the rest is history. So that the whites dominated all minority groups. And the whites felt that the minority groups were inferior to them. So this whole notion of inferiority and superiority came into focus. And this is what has caused our society today. When we look back at the injustices that were done to our people, and it's not only blacks, but all minority classes were were looked upon as inferior to the whites. But where are we today on all of this? Because we do not want to take too long, Mr. Speaker. I just want to show you what has happened to the world, why the world has become what it is today, and the whole notion of capitalist profit making is what caused whites to show that to believe that they are superior to all other races. Now, having said that, what has happened after 300 years of slavery by the blacks? Because we're talking mainly blacks. What has caused this society to be what it is today? Where you have total injustices being done to the blacks. After slavery, and of course we know we don't have to go through the injustices that were done, the harsh treatment of blacks. But after slavery was abolished, what happened? You have 100 years now of further injustices being done to the blacks. So that in order to provide, and this way I want members to understand that the whole question of capitalism is what caused this. Because whites, because they want to make profits and all their wealth, had to find a way of policing these things. So you have military in place, you have police in place, so that the police system that we have in the world today was brought forward by the Europeans as a means of protecting their wealth. And the police in the Western world, as we know it, was born out of the idea of protection of wealth for the rich, for the whites. And this in itself, even after slavery was abolished, and of course, as I heard today by the member for St. Michael South, St. Michael Northeast, she said that slavery was abolished in the Americas, maybe the last, I believe in 1865, just after 1865, slavery was abolished in America. So that the Americans had the harshest form of slavery of any kind. After this took place, after slavery was abolished, the conditions of blacks never improved within the Americas. So that America's system remained entrenched. In fact, there is a video that was shown quite recently where a white man showing his son how to use a gun. When things got bad and he was intersected by a group of black men, his skin was changed from white to black. When he got home, I don't know if you saw that, when he got home, his wife could not even recognize him. And he was shot by his own wife. It showed us today that the color of your skin is what matters here. The color of your skin. Now this here is very, very important, Mr. Speaker, because here a white person, his skin was changed by some form of injection, and he was changed, and it's only because of his color that his wife shot him. So that it seemed to me, it seemed to me, Mr. Speaker, what do you think? It seemed to me, Mr. Speaker, that this whole question of white versus black, it is very important for us to recognize that something is really wrong. That the thinking is that anything black, and I heard it member for St. Michael South mentioned it today, anything black, anything color black, bad, white supposed to be good. And we have to be able to transform our society. Today, there are some whites who are now, for the first time, helping to show that they want to change society, and they're moving with the blacks. But why has that changed? Why has that changed? I believe many within Americans, many persons within Europe have recognized for the first time that the color of your skin should not matter. And we have to be able to do that. And when we say Black Lives Matter, it is important that we do not see black as a color today or white as a color. I think more and more modern people are looking beyond color. And I am glad to see that our society is moving towards that. I'm glad to see that our society, Mr. Speaker, is moving towards a situation where you're saying for the first time, do not let us look at the color of your skin, but let's look at the person that you are. Let's look at what integrity you bring. Let's look at how you behave in society. And that is important. I think the color of your skin should not matter today. And I believe that when a number of young whites look at what their ancestors have brought to the table, some of them are very ashamed of what they have inherited from their whites, from their white families. Some of them believe that the time has come to repair some of the damages that were done over the last century. And we must look at a new system. I'm not sure if the question of capitalism will come to the fore within the next generation. But of course, we will have to wait and see, because, Mr. Speaker, as I started by saying, capitalism is behind this entire program that we have today. When I said today, I mean about 100 years linking back to today. But a new system will have to be put in place, Mr. Speaker, in order to move our society forward. If we are supposed to look at Black Lives Matter, and I hope that the person who have moved this resolution could look at what it is that we will have to do in order to move our society forward. Is it going to be a mixture of socialism and capitalism? Because obviously we cannot go back to capitalism. Capitalism breeds too much. You need profits, and in order to have profit, you have to safeguard your profits. In order to have profit, you have to have cheap labor. Is it what we want? Then we have to look at, if you say Black Lives Matter, should we be looking at a new system of education? Should we be looking at a new system of religion? Should we be looking at better health care for our people? When we look, and I want just to spend a minute on this, when we look at our education system for blacks within the Caribbean, Mr. Speaker, 40% of those persons leaving high school come out without any certification. 40%. When we look at, in terms of minority in the U.S., we have a situation where the majority of minorities, 40% of the population, black in the U.S. here, and recently we heard that 60% of the deaths are of blacks. So that it seems that most blacks suffer for health care, for education, for suffer because before the law, yes, and of course we have the normal brutality, police brutality and so on within the U.S. system mainly. So that capitalism is entrenched in our society today. We need a change. How do we make that change is left to the new generation. A mixture of socialism and communism, where you have government intervention. Now, clearly we have in America, American system will have to change. The American system is rooted in pure capitalism, so that governments play a minority role. Within our system, we have a mixed economy where governments intervene. We need to have more government intervene so they can protect the minority. We also must need, Mr. Speaker, a situation where, for the new generation, the blacks must start to believe that they have a stake within our society. I want to see where young people believe within their heart. And of course, we have to be able to teach, Mr. Speaker, the young people that they must believe in themselves. I think that is where it is. Too many people doubt their own self. And I've heard many persons in the cultural group, especially when you listen to the songs coming out of Jamaica, the reggae songs, and you listen to the rappers, you hear persons talking about what it is that we can do to change our society. What it is it the need for, I've of course heard of Bob Marley today, and most of his thinking was the injustices of the society of then. But today we're having other persons looking at how we can change our society for the better. And I think that this is incumbent on the new generation, those persons who are now at college, those persons who are maybe in the teenage life, because we are getting old and old, and we're going to be passing on very soon. But we will want to see that, we want to see that what the world will look like in the next 50 years, what it will be for the next 50 years. And I believe my final thoughts, Mr. Speaker, is this, that I would want to see our generation shift our educational focus, switch. Maybe I heard people thinking about a new religious order. We may have to look at what role would religious play, because in the past 100 years, religion has helped to entrench our capitalist system. Religion, and we are taught that we must be obedient. We were taught that we must turn our backs. We were taught these things, Mr. Speaker. What will happen in the new generation? With the new order, the world order, where we do not look at skin color, but we look at what a person can bring to the table. We must look at this. We must look at also how do we differentiate or not differentiate between man and woman, because we know today there is a different, this whole sexuality seems to be changing as well. So we have to look at the whole role of families. What is the role of families in today's society? So all of these are things that we need to put on the table if Black life is supposed to matter. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, it is left now to the new generation to bring new ideas to the fore. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Honorable Member for Christchurch Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I certainly rise to thank the honourable member for Christchurch South for bringing this resolution before this chamber. Regrettably, I was not here this morning to hear his presentation, but I stand, sir, to first express on behalf of the people of Christchurch East Central, sir, our support for the concept, notion, philosophy, if you like, sir, that Black lives matter. And it is important, sir, that we contextualize where we are as a people, and certainly how we see ourselves and how others see us, so that we can, for ourselves, sir, determine how we are going to move forward as a people, as communities, as families, sir, as countries. Because to operate in this environment, sir, clearly is quite a torturous one for Black people. But we do so, sir, out of a sense of pride, I think, sometimes, sir, with respect to how we have been able to demonstrate a level of civility in the face, sir, of harsh conditions, sir, to display a level of forgiveness, sir, a level of self-discipline, to not seek retribution, sir, for what has been clearly hundreds of years, sir, of disrespect, at the very least, torture at its worst, sir. But we have, along the way, determined that we will still want, sir, to live in a world where we can all be as one. And that, sir, perhaps is the strength, or some may say, sir, the weakness of black people. Because we, sir, have shown consistently that we will live with those who may have oppressed us. We will live, sir, to pull ourselves up, as they will say, sir, by our bootstraps. And we will sometimes, sir, suffer in silence until it reaches a point where we can no longer be silent, sir. And I wish, sir, to say, and I know, sir, I won't trespass on the law, as that is not my space. But something has dawned on me, sir, because when I watched the video of Mr. Floyd, sir, his life being snuffed out, I cast my mind back, sir, to 1991. Mr. Rodney King, sir, who similarly, sir, well, he didn't die, but he was beaten. It was taped, sir, and we all know the result. It went to court, sir, and the officers were acquitted. And we all know, sir, that sparked the riots. So as Mr. Floyd was on the video, sir, begging for his life, I was saying to myself, these officers, but really, sir, these murderers, according to the U.S. system, sir, you have to be tried by a jury of your peers, sir. So I asked myself, if these officers, these murderers, sir, are tried by a jury of their peers, what would the outcome be, sir, given all that we know that portends the justice, and I say justice, sir, quote unquote, system in the United States? And then I asked myself, sir, a basic question. Would these murderers receive a fair trial, sir? Because everybody, sir, and by fair I mean in the context of innocent until proven guilty, because there's no innocence here, sir. But of course, being a lawyer, sir, you have to, that is the premise of the law. There's no innocence here, sir. And therefore, I can't answer the question legally, sir. I'm sure that there are others who may wish to opine on it. But there can be no doubt, sir, in anybody's mind that any of those gentlemen were innocent at any time, sir, during the 8 minutes, 46 seconds, sir. But I still ask myself the question, because I am sure, sir, a good defense lawyer may be able to strike off many a juror, because the whole world would have seen the video and would have clearly seen the murder unfold. And therefore it is impossible, sir, for any juror, in my mind, to say honestly that they believe that any of those gentlemen could be innocent, sir, and that they can give them a fair trial. And therefore, when I say and give our support, sir, for the notion of Black Lives Matter, the system, sir, the system also has to reflect that. But that's I believe that one, sir, for the lawyers to to figure out. Because if what we see now, sir, has some people upset, I could only imagine, sir, in maybe a few months no time, maybe a year, whenever the trial comes to an end, sir, and the result, sir, is anyway, sir, close to anything that took place in 1991, then I fear, sir, that we will then see that point where all gloves will be off. Because I say to you, sir, quite firmly, that when I read, sir, of General Bussa and what took place in Bailey, sir, and how that sparked a series, sir, of revolutions across the West Indies, I think what we've seen moments, sir, along the way where, as black people, we believe that things may change. But I believe at this particular moment in time, sir, unless the system responds and recognizes that Black Lives Matter, unless the system responds, then I fear, sir, that we will see a significant destabilization, sir, of the globe on this very question. I hope that I am wrong, sir. I hope that I am wrong. But let me go further, sir, because context is important. I watched the video, sir, and I suppose I can't imagine anybody watching that video, sir, and not being horrified. But apparently there were some who were not horrified with what they saw in the video. But more than the video, sir, you would recall there was an officer backing. And to me, sir, of all the participants in the video, for me personally, that officer that stood there, sir, and did nothing, that officer is the real criminal, sir, in this scenario now. Because that officer not just failed in his duty to serve and protect, but in a sense, sir, that officer is a representation of the rest of the society, sir, that pretends that they don't know what's going on and will not lift a finger, sir, when they see injustice. It is instructive, sir. If I'm not mistaken, it was either the day or 2 days before, sir, in New York. There was a video of a black man. He was videoing a white lady, sir, in New York, telling him that she's going to call the police for him, sir, and say to the police that there's a black man threatening her in the park. Now, if you understand, sir, if you understand that that is a representation, sir, of the white privilege, if you like, is the term that is used. Because here is a guy in the park, bird watching, minding his business, and a white woman is going to say to a black man, I am going to call the police for you, and I'm going to tell them that there's an African American threatening me. On video, sir, if you understand the psychology that it would take for somebody to do something like that, then it tells me that when the officer was standing there, sir, watching Mr. Floyd beg for his life, it is that mentality, that psychology, sir, that exists in the society. And therefore, sir, the question here is a fundamental one. It is whether or not, certainly in America, whether black people, sir, wish to continue to subject themselves to a system, sir, that clearly has abandoned them? That is the fundamental question, sir. That is the fundamental question. Now, sir, I have traveled a few places in my very short life, sir. And I have never, well, I mean, obviously I'm a black man. That is unmistakable. But I have never, sir, felt uncomfortable traveling anywhere except in the United States, sir. And I've driven places, sir, and I've determined in my mind that I will never drive in the United States. And that was predicated, sir, on what you see on a regular basis. But clearly, it doesn't matter whether you're driving or not, sir, in the United States. It doesn't matter, sir, if you're home at you. They will come at you and kill you, sir. You're walking on the road with your family, sir. It doesn't matter. And therefore, sir, as I said, the fundamental issue for black people, they have to determine that if their lives are to matter, whether they wish to subject themselves, sir, to the system in the United States. Plain and simple. Now, sir, let me come home to land my intervention here, sir. As I reflect on the impact of COVID, and all of this, sir, can be, I mean, we've all given a perspective, sir, in this debate. But this is what I fundamentally believe, sir, as a economist, sir. I have to, and because at the end of the day, sir, slavery, as the honorable member for St. George North just indicated, slavery, capitalism, everything, sir, is rooted, obviously, in economics. And the world has been ordered for the last 4 or 5 centuries, sir, purely on that. And the history is there. It is undeniable, sir. But in this pandemic in Barbados, it has exposed, sir, something which we all know, and we were all prepared, sir, in a sense to look past. But, sir, we have right now almost 50,000 claims for unemployment. But you know what generally, sir, was the real reason that we have almost 50,000 claims for unemployment? It is simply because we have operated a system, sir, called tourism, that whilst people come to Barbados, sir, to vacation, and there's nothing at all wrong with that, the business that we were supposed to be playing our part in, sir, has generally not seen ordinary Barbadians as part of their client class. And therefore, when airplanes stop flying, sir, when airplanes stop flying, even though there are 280,000 people plus on this island, and once I would accept, sir, that the impact of the economy, the impact of the world economy, sir, would have had a certain impact on the Barbados economy. The reality is that today, if we had a truly integrated tourism sector that saw Barbadians, sir, black Barbadians, as part of your client class, sir, we would not have 40, almost 50,000 claims for unemployment in Barbados today. We would have had a different impact than that. And therefore, the question that we have to ask ourselves repeatedly, sir, is why is it that we continue to treat ourselves the way that we do? Because the answer to that question, sir, as fundamental as it is in a country that we have invested, sir, so much in trying to develop and build a society. Why do we still have these differences of approach, sir? Why do we continue, sir, to believe that if I come into a restaurant or a store, sir, that the service will be different from if someone from North America or Europe, sir, came into the store? Until we, sir, get in our heads that we need to first treat ourselves, sir, with the kind of respect that we would offer to the rest of the world, sir, then I know the economic impact that we are now seeing for COVID, sir, would not have been the same. I know that, sir, in my heart of hearts. And therefore, this debate, as important as it is, I believe, sir, that the country has to do some self-introspection, sir. Our people need to do some self-introspection. Because it is how we treat each other, sir, how we make each other feel when we interact with one another. And, sir, things can always be rosy. You know that. We are mature people. But the reality is, unless we see ourselves first, as certainly, sir, clearly, our brothers and sisters keeper, which means that we have to give ourselves, sir, the same level of service that we will bend over, sir, and give to others. We have to give to ourselves. Because on this little rock here, sir, it really could be a truly special place. But we got to love ourselves, sir, first. We got to love ourselves first. And as we move forward, sir, I want to wholeheartedly indicate that this issue, whilst complicated, it is a pretty simple one. Pretty simple one. We have to determine what we want for ourselves. And I say to all of those in the diaspora, sir, Barbados is the best place in the world to live. Do not subject yourself to nobody's foolishness. If people feel that they don't want you out there, come home. Come home, sir. Sir, I spent 5 years in England. And I heard someone, I don't remember the member that raised it. And the truth is, sir, you can make some good money overseas, sir, no problem. You can do that. But there's a point, sir, beyond which you can't go, you know. There's a point beyond which you can't go. And in those 5 years, sir, I recognize, and this was between 2006 and 10, sir, and it dawned on me, because I was doing some work, sir, for a company who had landed a contract for a global business, sir. But the company could not get the work done. So they hired me, sir, a black boy from Bank Hall, to come and do the work. So when I started, I said, but how these fellas could get this work? Because they had no capability, no capacity to get it done, sir. And I know in my heart of hearts, sir, that if ever there was a level playing field, if that concept was to ever become the reality, and it's not that black people want to take anything away from anybody, sir, but sir, we will compete on a level playing field. We just even complete when the playing field in even level, sir. But if ever there was a playing field to be level, sir, I know that we'll be able, sir, by our sheer will of force, to do right by our people. But, sir, the deck has been stacked against us for the past 500 years. And with the current construct, sir, ever so often, sir, somebody wants to put you on some blacklist, sir, which in of itself, sir, is offensive. Is offensive. Yeah, blacklist. And grey list. Offensive. Because it's the last call, sir, of those who believe, sir, that we are still property. And I don't want to hold up the chamber much longer. But we can go, sir, to any archive department, any part of the world, sir. Any archive department. And we will see the records that were well kept. Because, you know, sir, property is one of those things that people always make sure that when they supposedly own something, sir, they just have the deeds. You go to any archive in the world, and you can chronicle, sir, all of the deeds with respect to slavery. All of them. But you know what's interesting, sir? We have a situation of these days, whether it's, there's a concept now, sir, of, in some of our assessments where the references are made, sir, to human trafficking. And it's interesting because we, and they say we, in our part of the world, we are now required, sir, imagine that, we are now required to show that we are prosecuting people for human trafficking, sir. A serious matter. A serious matter. But we are now required to show that we are prosecuting people for human trafficking. And I ask myself, but how, sir? How? How? When sitting down in our archive, sir, we have not prosecuted anybody up until now, sir, for the evidence that is there sitting in our archive, sir, from Boston in the north all the way down to Brazil in the south, sir. So when we can have these conversations, sir, then we got to have a frank and open conversation about this matter of Black lives. Because until I would say this, sir, until the debt for the suffering of Black people has been fully paid, sir, fully paid, this matter will not be resolved. And we have to determine, sir, where we are going, not just as Barbados, but certainly as a collective, in terms of how we will engage the world. And I know we have determined how this Barbados Labour Party will engage the world. And we know that through our engagement, sir, that deepening our ties with countries on the African continent, sir, is where our future will lie, sir. And therefore, it is in that context that I say that this government's actions have so far demonstrated our commitment and understanding that we have it within ourselves, sir, to chart a path which will give benefit to all of our people in this country. So I fully support the resolution, sir. It is not a subject matter that often comes before this chamber in this way. But certainly, sir, over the last 2 years, we have come to this office, this place, to give action and to give light, sir, where the government operating in seriously constrained financial circumstances, sir, have sought to empower and continue to deliver a better life, certainly, sir, for all of our people. But that is the commitment, sir, of this government. But this fundamental matter, sir, requires deep thought, deep introspection, sir, and then after that, sir, deep action by all of us to be able to get the appropriate resolution. And so, sir, with those few words, sir, I'm obliged to you.
Honorable Member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, I raise solemn support to the resolution that was brought by the Honorable Member for Christchurch South, my immediate neighbor. I am not surprised that he was the one to bring it, nor am I surprised at the depth and thoroughness with which the resolution was first presented. I want to compliment and commend everyone that has spoken so far. I find myself in the awkward position of having heard almost everything that there was possible to say on this matter. And the last thing that I had left to say was just said. However, being a man of initiative, I will find some more things to say. I endorse everything that was said so far with one exception. The Honourable Member for St. George North said so that we're all getting old and passing on. I wish to rebuke that from over this side.
Honorable Member, I heard the aside when he can speak for himself, you know. I heard that, you know.
Yes, sir. Sir, let me start on a serious note. I'm going to be very, very brief. Not brief in the same way as the Honourable Member for Christchurch Essential was brief. I mean actually brief. I just want to extend condolences to the families of Glenroy James and Christoph Griffith, who met an unfortunate tragedy yesterday. It cannot be easy for the family, but I think the outpouring of sympathy and wishes would let them know that the whole of Barbados is sharing with them in their grief. It was unfortunate in how it happened, and I just want them to take comfort that Barbados is praying for them. Sir, Black Lives Matter. What does that really mean? We've heard black and proud. We speak about black pride. Now we're at Black Lives Matter. This originated out of a heinous crime and a deed perpetrated against a black person in the United States. And everybody's spoken about that. That's been all over the press. That's being ventilated to the point of exhaustion. And I want to extract from that something that's a bit more relevant to us here. When I did history for CXC, there was a book, can't remember the name of the book. It might have been that. But there was a phrase in there that to control the slaves, the masters kept the slaves in profoundest ignorance. And I believe a lot of our difficulties as a race have to deal with how we perceive ourselves. How do we see ourselves? Our young people want to straighten their hair and bleach their skin. And the world has almost gone on its head because the black women are trying to look like white women, and the white women are padding their bottoms and plumping their lips to look like black women. It seems almost that nobody is happy. Nobody is happy with how they look. For us to move forward as a people, we need to first become comfortable in ourselves as a people. We need to become comfortable in our own skins. Black lives matter, yes, but black lives should matter most to us. It is all well and good for us to try to get people overseas and white people, people who don't look like us, to try to respect us and respect our lives. But we also do need to respect our own lives. It hurts me every time I see in Barbados another young man dead at the hands of another young man in Barbados. I see some of those same people in the same demographic wearing the Black Lives Matter t-shirts and posting all the Black Lives Matter slogans on Instagram and hyping it on social media. But I want them to not just do it now, but the next time you're angry with another person, the next time you're moved to extreme anger or you feel that you have been wrong, recall then the slogans that you're chanting now and say that Black Lives Matter and leave out the gun. That Black Lives Matter, and rather than going looking for the man who you think did you a wrong, that you stay home and pray. When you think Black Lives Matter, rather than going looking for trouble or going breaking into somebody's house, remember that person is probably black too, and leave it out. Black lives should matter most, sir, to us. The last thing, sir, that I actually wish to touch on. I'm a very sociable person. I'm as sociable as you get. When I was at law school, sir, I was in the Hindu organization. And for Hindu week, I was modeling in my sari and my Hindu gear. It's not a sari, but you know what I'm talking about. And I was in the Hindu play. For the Muslim week, I was up front and center in my Muslim gear, right? And in the Muslim functions. For whatever was going on, regardless of who was putting it on, I, Wilfred Abrams, was up there because I am not threatened by you, who is the Muslim. I am not threatened by you, who is the Hindu. I am not threatened by you, who is the white person. And it has to do with how I perceive myself, not how you perceive me. People fought for the rights for us to sit in the front of a bus. Rosa Parks sparked a whole movement by refusing to move from the front of a bus. But yet the bulk of our black people here in Barbados, we go into a room, we go and sit at the back. How many of our branch meetings? People come in and they head straight for the back. You go to lectures at university, they head straight for the back. Actually, we even love the back in the cinema for an entirely different reason. But the point is, people fought for our right to come forward. And we ignore all of that, and we go back to the back. When I go into the room, sir, I go to the front. I sit down in the front, because that is how I perceive me. So for us, our struggle has to start with the improvement of our perception of ourselves. When we start to see ourselves as worthy, and we look in the mirror, and we recognize what we look like, then we will look at the next person who looks like us and also see them as worthy, because we love ourselves, we love where we came from, we love all the things connected to who we think we are. So I'm asking all of Barbados, as we chant this slogan, Black Lives Matter, and as we wear the t-shirts, Black Lives Matter, as we put up the hashtag, Black Lives Matter, I want us to add on something else. Black Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter most to us because we are black. Sir, having said all of that, I entirely support this resolution and all that it stands for, and I hope that coming out of this, coming out of the tragedy that led to this movement, that we can see this movement impacting our own people in Barbados, black, white, whoever you are. Once you live here, you call yourself Bajan. Let us see us treating each other differently and realizing that we are all important. Sir, with those very few words, I wish to completely support this resolution.
Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I have listened, and one of the things that continues to come across to me very clearly is that there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of anger, there's also, in my mind, a lot of work that needs to be done with our people. Mr. Speaker, the situation that we are currently talking about with Mr. George Floyd has been going on in the United States of America from the very first time black people set foot on that place. Nothing new. what has happened is that as with the social media platforms, people have now gotten a chance to see these things happening in front of their eyes, whereas they would have heard of it, but not seeing it, they probably didn't respond the way that they would have responded now by having the chance to see it. But I want to put something to this honorable chamber, because I've heard people talk about what's happening in America a lot and what's happened in England and Europe. But history has shown us that wherever the black man has been, he has suffered some sort of prejudice or some sort of racism. Middle East, Yemen, you see it. We were enslaved rather, by Arabs. In Asia, you've seen it recently in China. If you search a little deeper, you'll see people in Japan talk about the different things that they face too. You come in the Americas, it's the same thing. But whenever you see things like that, it tells me, Mr. Speaker, that there is something about us that we do not even recognize in ourselves that makes the rest of the world have a problem with who we are. Could it be that others see the potential in us that we ourselves do not see and probably begin to fear this? Could it be that we have allowed ourselves in some ways to be our own worst enemies? We've been having these conversations about black empowerment for a long time. And what concerns me most is that if you look at, let's just start, just deal with the Caribbean alone. We have taken over the reins of power, so to speak. 60s, majority of us, 50s some, but 60s most of us. And during this time, a lot of the things that we keep talking about, in my mind, should have already been accomplished. So the question is, what is it that stops us from doing the things that we know we should do for the improvement of ourselves time and time and time again? I've listened and I've heard us talk about the educational system. I've heard us talk about religion. I've heard us talk about our inability to come together to do things. But I think that this, and a number of my colleagues have spoken about it, this may be the time. This may very well be the time when, rather than spend time looking at what has been done to us, we begin to look to see what we have not done for ourselves and correct that. And correct that, Mr. Speaker. In today's world, we continue to look to Europe to be our saviors. And let's be frank. The honorable member for St. James South would have mentioned the whole concept of reparations. How long have we been talking about this reparations? I have sat and watched various people, academics, all sorts of people write long papers talking about reparations. They've had the conversations from South Africa to tell me to wherever. Somebody mentioned 40 acres and a mule from the U.S. And the response has always been a resounding no. So are you going to sit down, keep asking about it? When are you going to understand? Just it ain't coming. It ain't coming. So the time has come where we got to wake up. Stop with this nonsense. Nobody care about you. You trying your best to be everything to everybody except yourself. We wake up, man. Nobody giving you no reparation. You're going to make your own way. And the only way that you're going to do it is stop talk. Stop talking. Because this always get talk. This is time to do. And if you don't seize this moment and fall into the trap that you usually fall into, which is turning upon each other like, keep my language clean, but turning on each other over nonsense when there's a bigger picture to deal with. A much bigger picture. But thank God that this government has been able to do something that a lot of people don't seem to understand what's happening. This government, through the Ministry of the Creative Economy, Culture and Sport, made the bold step to reach across the water to the continent, specifically into Guyana, to begin the process of bridging the gap between the continent and us in the diaspora in this part of the world. Significant strides in being in office for 2 years. Out of that, what has happened? Parties from both sides have been to each other. Nurses coming in to Barbados, our sisters. Entrepreneurs from Barbados getting ready to do business. In fact, they've already started to do business in Guyana, which gives us a gateway to begin to shift where we spend our money and who we spend our money with. Because at the end of the day, Marcus Garvey made the point, and it is ironic, oh, how we forget Africa for Africans at home and abroad. We are becoming a part of the African Union and now Caribbean. We have the opportunity to do something that will change the lives of people on both the continent and this region. Black people. But now is the time to seize the moment. And on this issue of reparation, it cannot any longer be that a bunch of academics writing papers and going asking about it. This will require all heads of states where black people live must get up. All people who are in parliaments where black people are involved must get up. People in the United States, black people must get up and be a part of the conversation of reparation. And people might ask, why? Well, I tell you why. Because we've been making a joke out of it for too long. If you're telling me that people sitting down in the British Parliament today were paid by their own governments for loss of property, it happened in their parliament. You think that they send academics out to go and talk for it? They put it into law in their parliament to give reparation to the planters, and the descendants of the planters are still benefiting from it today. Equivalent of what? 300 billion pounds today. That's what they got. And we sending all kinds of people, except the leadership of the countries, to go to talk about reparation. Can't work. It's either you're serious or you're making sport. Well, I certainly can't make none. Unlike a lot of people who talk, Mr. Speaker, I know racism head on. I know what it's like to be walking into a primary school and have people call you a gollywog, a monkey, all kinds of things. I know it. So when I come to talk, I don't talk from I hear or I see on social media. I know, I feel, and it is something that I would not want to foster on my worst enemy. I wouldn't want to foster it on my worst enemy because I know how it can make you feel. But what's even worse, and I hear some of my colleagues talk about it today too, what is even worse than that is when it come among your own. And then want to make you feel less than a human being. Based on what? So let me talk now. Based on what? One went to Harrison College. One went to Queen's College. One went to Cornmeer. One went to Lodge. So what? You're black as hell when it's done. And no white people ain't care. None. You take all the black presidents or prime ministers or whatever you got and you put them in a truck and drive them through Europe with a big police entourage in front. You know what the problem is? Who's them criminals? A whole lot. Whole lot. Get out here and play to something big. Mr. Speaker, I went to Japan the other day. I got to talk now, cause I sit down silent for a little while. I went to Japan. Come back from Japan, come to Canada. Only black man in the baggage claim. You only one. Man come with a dog, sniff in my bags. I ain't seen nothing. The dog ain't seen nothing, I ain't seen nothing either. Dog gone out. Don't laugh. Guys, serious. Dog gone on. Next day I started. Dog come again. Man come again with dog. This time, put his hand on my back so up. Dog smell. Okay, dog ain't say nothing. Dog gone. Dog gone again. Next day, Mr. Speaker, another man with another dog come. Well, I listen, and I am now on the verge of losing it. Because if he come twice, I could almost see already that the handles of my bike cut and undo. So I don't know what they're looking for. But the dog come two, and then a different one come, that's three. So I had to tell my DPS, let me tell you, if they get to number 4, the Prime Minister gonna fire me. Cause them hell in here. As the minister, you understand what I tell you, Mr. Speaker? But you're the only black man in there. Gone, ain't gone to, oh Lord, I got my head so confused now. I went these states, gone represented Barbados again. Coming out, they tell me, you have to step in the thing and get scanned. Well, they get scanned. Coming out now, these is black people now. This is the white people, these black people. Man and a girl. Tell me, sir, it didn't do good, you may have to go back in. Well, when I give the look, he said, I was only kidding. I didn't kidding. I did done with that. And that's my own. Ain't about white, brown, yellow, or purple. That's my own. Can't make that nonsense. So when we can talk, we got to talk about how we deal with one another. We got to talk about that. We got to talk about it. Because I'm telling you, something wrong, and we're wrong. And I appreciate a lot of the things that I hear people saying. How Nelson's statue made me feel. But no piece of cement, or rocks, or dead man cannot make John King feel bad. It would never happen. It can't happen. How a dead man can make me feel bad? It means that we got a problem that we got to solve. And the thing is that we got to be able, man, to stand up in front of anything and anybody, anywhere in the world, and be proud of who you are. You didn't make yourself a slave. You were enslaved. They're two different things. You didn't bring yourself down here. You didn't put yourself in the positions that you find yourself in. But ask yourself, who other than us could have taken all of that and be here today? You don't even give yourself credit for what you do. We've withstood all kinds of abuse, mental, physical, even spiritual. Because let me not start me up now. Because we're talking. You going in church and bowing down. Everybody else in the world, God look like them except we one. And then you tell me, John can't do us a soul. Well, how come I can't say so? Why ain't this so? Am I a clown? But everybody else God look like them. Why? But as soon as God got that kind of conversation, everybody mouth twisted. Everybody vexed. But you don't understand what it is that you're saying about yourself. That not even that you can't even say to yourself, and look, I want my luck with me. Because I would find it very strange that I getting all of this beat up, all of this liquor, all of this unfair, all of this thing, so, and then when I go so to say hallelujah, say man, say man, but something got to be wrong. So, Mr. Speaker, I ain't know what no more you think. Mr. Ford, you know what I'm saying is true, though. Of course. But I say all of that just to say this, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to wrap up now. We've got to get serious about this, because it is a serious problem. It's a very serious problem. And I believe that this is a moment, there's an energy on the ground with our young people who may probably not be as exhausted as those of us who've been in this fight for so many years. They have the energy. They got all the things that you need to push through. So if it is the removal of a dead man statue, move it. If it is the removal of some things in the educational system that don't serve us, move it. If it is getting ourselves to look at ourselves in a complete different way, to appreciate ourselves for who we are, move it. And as Minister of the Christ Church, he said, the violence against ourselves, move that too. Move that. And I bet you that when we move that, we move those things, all of the other things that we talk about that are problems for us will cease to exist. And the good thing about it is, when you do it for yourself, nobody can do it as better. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for allowing me.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I know the hour is late, and I will try to.
Michael, Northwest.
And I will try to be as brief as possible, Mr. Speaker, sir. Sir, I rise as a black man to act as a buttress to fully support this resolution and the words echoed by my black brother and member for Christchurch South. Mr. Speaker, sir, I sat and listened to the member for Christchurch South as he expressed his profound empathy against anti-black racism towards the lives lost in the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, sir, it should not take George Floyd to lose his life to know that Black lives matter. It should not take Rashad Brooks to lose his life to know that Black lives matter. It should not take many others to lose their lives to know that Black lives matter. Mr. Speaker, sir, Black lives matter no matter what the circumstances are. Mr. Speaker, sir, Black lives matter no matter who you are. Racism across the world, Mr. Speaker, sir, did not start today. Racism across the world did not started yesterday, Mr. Speaker, sir. The word race is a concept that was created as a classification of human beings with the purpose of giving power and to legitimize the dominance of white people over our black people. Mr. Speaker, sir, the United States of America, where the late George Floyd died, is a perfect example of this reality. When we bleed, we all bleed blood, Mr. Speaker, sir. We don't bleed white blood or black blood. We all bleed the same color blood, Mr. Speaker, sir. When God created us, He did not create us unequal. I am a servant of God who wish to preach the gospel, and I quote Acts chapter 10, verse 34. So Peter opened his mouth and said, "Truly I understand that God shows no partiality," unquote. God created all of us equal. We as black people need to stand in unity at all times. We as black people cannot stand in unity only when a black man's life is taken by a white man who is racist. Mr. Speaker, sir, we as black people need to send a strong message against racism. Sir, I have a friend that said to me 3 years ago, who his boss at that point in time, sir, was a white man. And my friend stated to me that his boss at that point in time said to him that if he knew putting guns in black people's hands will cause them to kill each other, that is something that the white people would have done back in the days of slavery. And we as black people, sir, need to stop destroying each other in the eyes of those who are racist. We as black people, sir, need to stop gunning down each other in the eyes of those who are racist. We as black people need to stop our wicked actions against each other in the eyes of those who are racist. Black lives matter. And this message has to start among us as black people, Mr. Speaker, sir. Black lives matter. And we as black people, our lives are just as important as any white man's life who is racist. Mr. Speaker, sir, black lives matter, and we as black people should not look down on our brothers and sisters in the eyes of those who are racist. Black lives matter, Mr. Speaker, sir, and we as black people should not kick down the ladder of opportunities and betterment. We must not stop our black brothers and sisters from becoming successful in the eyes of those who are racist. We as black people, sir, our brothers and sisters must stand in unity at all times in order to fight racism across the world, Mr. Speaker, sir. We need to let those who are racist across the world know that black lives matter. The late Martin Luther King spoke about the three evils in the world, Mr. Speaker, sir. The three major evils: one, the evil of racism; two, the evil of poverty; and three, the evil of war. And I wish to echo the words of the late black brother, the evil of racism, and I quote, "Now let us turn first to the evil of racism. There can be no gainsaying of the fact that racism is still alive all over America. Racial injustice is still the Negro's burden and Americans' shame. We must face the hard fact that many Americans would like to have a nation which is a democracy for white Americans, but simultaneously a dictatorship over black Americans. We must face the fact that we still have much to do in the area of race relations," unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, and I conclude, Mr. Speaker, sir, we as black people must bond together and fight against racism across the world together. I thank you, sir.
Honourable Member Christchurch South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I trust that I would have met the mandate in introducing the resolution some 12, 13 hours ago. And it is now left for me only to wrap up the entire debate. But I could not do so unless I ask this chamber to acknowledge the presence, even at this late hour, of the Honorable Anthony Carter. And the most honorable, thank you very much. The most honorable Anthony Carter, and it is an honor most deserving. And it is significant that he is here, and I believe that he is here in a representative capacity. I believe that he would not mind that we mention the names of those other patriots who really carried this country to a large extent when some of us in here were not even born. They were given identity to a new Barbados. Himself, persons like Richard Stout, Clarence Thompson, Lord Radio, now Sir Emil Straker, who recited the physical beauty of this country in the famous song, Beautiful Barbados. And at a time when Barbados was struggling to establish an identity, I call them patriots. These patriots were in the vanguard of the movement to give Barbados its identity. All too often, we tend to focus on politicians. And if you ask who was the representative for a particular constituency in 1973, 73% of the persons you ask would not remember. If you ask most Barbadians who sang Emerton, they will remember. If you ask most Barbadians who sang Beautiful Barbados, they will remember. And that is why I say that these were the men in the forefront, in the vanguard of giving Barbados an identity when we were struggling to establish that identity even after formal independence in 1966. And therefore, Most Honorable Anthony Carter, it gives me pleasure to see you here and to pay homage to you and to give you highest honor on my behalf and behalf of the party. And I know that you attended this debate for its significance. And I will not speak about you for the entirety of this wrap-up, but to say to you that you have nothing else to prove in this country. After what you've done, after what you've written, after your voice of protest has been heard across this country and across this region and across this world, there's nothing else for you to prove. You have made your mark, you have done your duty. This debate, Your Honor, as I said, I was mandated to introduce. Beg your pardon? Yes, he's Your Honor. That's a title that you can use for him. You can use them interchangeably. So that, Your Honor, this debate is important. It touches an issue that all too often makes us uncomfortable. And it is a tribute to this chamber that it has extended beyond 12 hours, including the lunch breaks, of course. And the test of this country's maturity is when it is able to discuss and debate the uncomfortable topics. Because we will not progress as a nation unless we're able to meet each other on uncomfortable terrain and to resolve the major issues that confront us. And this is a major issue that confronts this country. Today I spoke of legacy. And none of us in this room, none of us in this chamber will be able to truthfully say that this country or the state of this country at this point is the same as it was 40 years ago. Whether it has modernized or whether it has developed, and it has certainly modernized, but modernization is not always development. But if we comfort ourselves with the view that we have developed 40 years later, it is now our duty to ensure that 40 years from now, that this will be a different country. We have not reached our ultimate point in our development. And if this topic has been one that retards our development for our reluctance to discuss it, for our reluctance to confront it as a major issue towards this country's ultimate development, I think it has to be discussed. And we have to leave this discussion as part of the legacy for a better Barbados 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. And so I am pleased, Your Honor, that I've been a part of it. I am pleased that I received the mandate to introduce the resolution and to lead off the debate. As I said, it has been an honor. It is my duty as a member of this Parliament. And I would like to thank all persons who spoke. The views were divergent. In some cases, they were funny. And the good Lord knows sometimes we need some relief from the rigors of debate that is a little uncomfortable at times. But I'd like to thank all those persons who spoke. I'd like to thank all persons who also did not speak, but their presence here was important as moral support. And to hope that this debate is not something that we shall visit as some kind of an excursion, but that we will recognize that it is fundamental and that it touches and concerns almost all areas of political life. I heard the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, and he says it quite often. He says, I am an economist. But he's also a politician. And he's also a social scientist. And he should not speak with any apology when debates of this nature come before him. Not only because he is competent and more than competent to address this issue, but because this issue touches and concerns every portfolio in this government. And there's no minister, nor is there any member of Parliament that will say that he will traverse or she will traverse the political terrain unless he or she is called upon to confront the issue that has met us here today. Let it not be a season, but let the consciousness of this important issue visit all of us in our deliberations, in our policies, as we traverse the political terrain. So that, Your Honor, I believe I've expended the short time you've given me at close to midnight, and I shan't trouble you any further, except to thank you for your patience and to thank you for the opportunity that you've given to this chamber to debate this matter. I'm obliged to you, and good night, sir. I have to read it? I am called again to beg you, sir, that this resolution should pass.
The question is that this resolution do not pass. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This resolution now is passed.
So we go now to government business. Order number 14 in the name of the Honorable Minister of Health and Wellness to move a passing of a resolution to extend the public health emergency.
Honorable member City of Bridgetown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This resolution has its genesis really in the public health, in the proclamation that was issued on the 28th of March of this year and expired on the 27th of April. It was then extended until the 30th of June and has not yet been revoked. And what we're seeking to do here is to further extend the proclamation until the 31st day of August of 2020. I think I owe it to the House to explain the rationale for the extension. And I do so because I think it is kind of ironic that we are seeking the extension today, and today is actually, I believe, precisely 1 month since this country has recorded its last positive case in terms of local transmission. You would have recalled that we would have had 5 cases that were repatriated persons who, on arrival, would have been tested, and the positive results were issued by the lab on the following day. But we've now gone about 1 month without having a case. And so, I would forgive anyone who may have asked the question in these circumstances as to why we are seeking this extension. But I want to say that today, I would have spent the entire day attending a PAHO Executive Committee meeting, and there was a very interesting presentation on COVID-19 response within the Americas. And a number of challenges were presented that, from PAHO, challenges to the countries of the region in dealing with COVID going forward. And of all of those challenges, there was one that stood out in my mind, and it is the fact that it is said that there's a gap which exists between authorities communicating the risks associated with COVID and the interventions that are required to mitigate those risks against the perception of those risks by the general public, the perception of the risk by the general public. And I want to posit, Mr. Speaker, that the extension of the public health emergency here in Barbados is the cornerstone in our efforts to close that gap between public perception of the risk and communicating the risk and the mitigation of those risks by the authorities. And I want to make it very, very clear that yes, we have not had a case in about a month, but that should not be taken to mean that there is no longer a problem, there is no longer an international pandemic, and that we no longer have a public health emergency. And I say that because we are not operating in a silo, and we do not live in a bubble. Barbados has a close and intimate relationship with the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, and to extend that to CARICOM, and we are part of the Americas. And if you've been following the news recently, you would have recognized that The Americas is now where the epicenter is for COVID-19, the Americas. And out of the 9 million cases, confirmed cases of COVID globally, approximately 50% of those cases have been recorded in the Americas. And if we can bring it a little closer to home, almost 4.5 million cases have now been reported in the Americas. The Americas also is now the place for the most new cases. And within a 24-hour period, for example, out of 152,000 new cases, 90,000 of those cases were recorded in the Americas. I want to indicate also that in the top 10 countries in the world in terms of positive COVID cases, there are 5 countries in the Americas in the top 10, and the 6th country within the top 15 countries in the world. The USA, with 25% of the world's cases, approximately 2.3 million, followed by Brazil, 1.2 million or 12%. And then Peru and Chile with over 250,000 cases, and Mexico, 185,000 cases. Why am I saying this? Those of us in here who know our geography would know that a CARICOM country called Guyana shares a common border with Brazil on its the south and southwestern side of Guyana shares a border with Brazil. And also Suriname shares a border to the south with Brazil. And all of that is to say to you and to all those persons in this honorable chamber, Mr. Speaker, that as long as this situation continues, not only globally, but in the Americas, and maybe consider the fact that although Europe is kind of leveling off at the moment, but still the UK with 306,000 cases, our source markets and the areas of the world, Europe and the Americas, Canada, United States, where we get our direct flights, we still have to be extremely vigilant. And that is why we are seeking to extend that public health emergency, because admittedly, we are in a good position at this point in time. And being in this good position really is a result not only of the hard work of public health officials and all of those other agencies and the NGOs, the social partnership, labor, of course, and all of those and the churches, but it's equally because of the cooperation and collaboration of the vast majority of Barbadians. There are very few people who might have been flaunting the protocols and so on, but we are satisfied that Barbadians, for the most part, have been disciplined, have been sensible, and have cooperated with us. And that is what has led us to this point. But all of that could easily go through the window by a few imported cases if we do not have the right protocols in place. And the extension of this public health emergency would allow us to be able to escalate if we need to escalate in terms of the measures that we are adopting, and it also facilitates the operations of several areas of our response to the pandemic. For example, the nurses that we have here from Cuba are here under and as a result of the public health emergency declaration, because that gives certain powers to the Minister of Health to be able to do that. Even the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, there are some regulations that have been passed here in this House, enacted in this House, to allow the Queen Elizabeth Hospital to add various compounds and facilities to the hospital infrastructure for the management of the pandemic. So that, for example, when we had the Blackman Gollop School that came under the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Harrison Point at the moment is functioning as a Queen Elizabeth Hospital facility for obvious reasons. So there's every good in what is being done here. And I don't think I have to go into very much more long talk, really, except to say that all this is to allow us to continue to manage what is still a public health emergency and a pandemic. There are going to be ebbs and flows. There are times when we will scale down the response, as we are doing right now. But although we are scaling down the response, we are now preparing for what could happen later on so that we are in a position to be able to manage our response and to stay on top of things. And I dare say that the passing of this resolution by extending the public health emergency will provide and continue to provide that extra teeth to the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and by extension to the government and the country to continue to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. And so with those few words, I beg to move that the resolution now pass.
The question is that this resolution do now pass. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution now stands passed. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, we have come to the end of today's sitting. Just want to thank all honorable members for putting up and being patient for the course of today's sitting. I beg to move that this sitting be adjourned until the 7th of July at 10 a.m.
Until
7th of July, 10 a.m.
Before we adjourn the night sitting, on behalf of my family and I, the entire Parliament, inclusive of the clerk, the deputy clerks, the marshal, the deputy marshal, and all the ancillary staff of Parliament, I wish to extend sincere condolences to the families of Glenroy James and Christoph Griffith in relation to the horrific deaths that occur on the 22nd of June 2020. I know the father of Christoph personally, a very astute and good police officer, and I knew Christoph Griffith also because he attended Charles F. Broom Primary, the same school as my last daughter. So I wish to extend sincere condolences to the family. The question is that this honorable chamber stands adjourned until the 7th day of July at 10 a.m. in the forenoon, Tuesday. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 7th day of July at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.